Before her name became associated with national legislation and campus safety reform, Samantha Lee Josephson was simply Sammy, a daughter, a sister, a friend, and a young woman with an ambitious vision for her future. Samantha was born in Princeton, New Jersey, and raised in the close-knit community of Robbinsville. Friends and family describe her childhood as grounded in strong family values, academic dedication, and a natural curiosity about the world beyond her hometown. By the time she graduated high school, that curiosity had already begun shaping her goals. She enrolled at the University of South Carolina, where she majored in political science, a field that reflected both her intellectual interests and her long-term aspirations. Samantha wasn't just earning a degree, she was building a path toward a career she had carefully envisioned. At just 21 years old, she was in her senior year and preparing to graduate in 2019. Law school acceptance letters had already arrived. She had earned a full scholarship to Drexel University's Thomas R. Klein School of Law, a remarkable academic achievement. She had also received a partial scholarship offer from Rutgers University. Her family says those accomplishments reflected years of discipline and determination. Samantha's dream was to practice international law. She was fascinated by global policy, cross-border justice, and diplomacy. Professors described her as thoughtful and analytical, someone who asked bigger-picture questions in class discussions. But Samantha's college experience was not defined by academics alone. She was an active member of the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority, where she formed friendships that would become lifelong bonds. Sorority sisters recall her warmth, her humor, and her ability to make others feel welcome. She balanced her coursework with philanthropy events, social gatherings, and campus involvement. Her time at South Carolina also included studying abroad, an experience that deepened her global perspective. Samantha spent time in Barcelona and traveled to Madrid and Paris, immersing herself in European culture and international history. Family members say those trips only strengthened her desire to work in international law, where she hoped to bridge cultural divides and make meaningful change. By the spring of 2019, Samantha stood at the edge of a major milestone. Graduation was weeks away. Law school orientation was on the horizon. Her future seemed mapped out with promise and direction. Instead, her life was cut tragically short. After her death, tributes poured in from classmates, professors, and friends across New Jersey and South Carolina. University officials described her as driven and compassionate. Sorority members held vigils in her honor, remembering her laughter and ambition. Samantha was laid to rest at Perrinville Jewish Cemetery in Perrinville, New Jersey. Her funeral drew hundreds of mourners, a testament to how widely she was loved and how deeply she had impacted those around her in just 21 years. Today, when her name is spoken, it carries both sorrow and significance. To her family, she remains the daughter who called home regularly, the young woman who studied late into the night, and the traveler who sent photos from Europe full of excitement. To classmates, she is remembered as a future attorney who never doubted she could make a difference. And to many across the country, Samantha Josephson represents a life of enormous potential that was on the brink of fulfillment. Her story is not only about tragedy, it is about promise, about a scholarship earned through merit, about international dreams nurtured through education, about friendships forged in sorority halls and classrooms, about a future that by every account was bright. In remembering Samantha, those who loved her often emphasize one simple truth: she was more than the circumstances of her death. She was a scholar, a traveler, a sister, a friend, and a young woman whose aspirations reached far beyond the night that ended her life. In the early morning hours of March 29, 2019, Samantha Josephson was enjoying what should have been an ordinary night out with friends in Columbia's Five Points district, a popular area filled with college students, music, and late-night energy. Shortly before 2 a.m., Samantha decided to call it a night. She stepped outside the Bird Dog bar and used her phone to request an Uber ride home, a decision millions of Americans make every day without hesitation. At 2:09 a.m., surveillance cameras captured a black Chevrolet Impala pulling up near where she was standing. Believing it to be the vehicle assigned to her through the rideshare app, Samantha entered the car. But investigators later determined that the Impala was not the Uber she had requested. Behind the wheel was 24-year-old Nathaniel Rowland, a man who was not a registered rideshare driver. Authorities say that once Samantha was inside, Rowland activated the vehicle's child safety locks, ensuring the rear doors could only be opened from the outside. She was trapped. What happened next would later be detailed in court through forensic testimony and autopsy findings, evidence that prosecutors described as overwhelming and deeply disturbing. Investigators say Rowland attacked Samantha with a two-bladed knife. The assault was described by medical experts as sustained and frenzied. According to testimony presented during trial, Samantha fought to protect herself. Defensive wounds were found on her hands, including one injury that penetrated completely through her right hand, consistent with someone raising their arm in an attempt to block an attack. The autopsy revealed that she suffered approximately 120 stab wounds. Many were concentrated along her neck and shoulder area, suggesting rapid, repeated strikes. One wound to her neck severed a major artery responsible for carrying blood to the brain. Another forceful strike to her head was so severe that it penetrated the skull. The medical examiner testified that Samantha also sustained injuries to her face, torso, back, lung, leg, and feet. Her hyoid bone, located in the neck, was found to be fractured, indicating additional trauma. Despite the brutality of the attack, forensic experts told jurors that Samantha likely remained conscious for at least part of the assault and attempted to resist. Ultimately, the pathologist concluded that she died within approximately 10 to 20 minutes due to massive blood loss. Prosecutors believe that after the attack, Rowland drove roughly 65 miles from Columbia to a rural area near New Zion, South Carolina. There, investigators say he disposed of Samantha's body in a field, where she was discovered later that day by turkey hunters. The timeline reconstructed through surveillance video, cell phone data, and vehicle tracking evidence formed a central pillar of the prosecution's case. Cameras throughout the Five Points district captured Samantha entering the Impala. Traffic cameras later recorded the vehicle traveling away from Columbia. When Rowland was arrested less than 24 hours later, investigators found what they described as critical forensic evidence inside his car, including Samantha's blood. During the 2021 trial, jurors listened carefully as forensic specialists explained the nature of the injuries and the sequence of events. The evidence painted a clear and chilling narrative. Samantha had entered what she believed was a safe ride home. Instead, she encountered a predator who exploited that assumption. The medical testimony became one of the most powerful components of the prosecution's case, underscoring not only the severity of the attack, but also the fact that Samantha fought back.
For her family, those details were devastating to hear, yet they also became part of how loved ones remember her as someone who resisted, who tried to survive, who did not surrender quietly. The brutality of the crime shocked the Columbia community and quickly gained national attention. College campuses across the country revisited safety protocols. Rideshare companies reinforced messaging about verifying license plates and driver identities. But beyond the legal proceedings and public awareness campaigns, the facts remain stark. A young woman, weeks away from graduating college, stepped into a car believing she was going home. Instead, she was driven away from the city lights into darkness and never returned.
As the sun rose over Columbia on March 30th, 2019, concern began to grow. Samantha Josephson had not come home. Her roommates, realizing she never returned after requesting a rideshare the night before, reported her missing. What began as anxious phone calls and text messages quickly escalated into a full-scale search. 14 hours after she unknowingly entered the wrong vehicle, the search came to a devastating end. Turkey hunters in a rural field near the town of New Zion in Clarendon County, roughly 65 miles from Columbia, made the grim discovery. Samantha's body had been left in a remote area far from the city streets where she was last seen alive. Law enforcement soon confirmed that the location where her body was found was near an area where Nathaniel Rowland had recently resided, a detail that would later become significant in court. An autopsy determined that Samantha died from multiple sharp force injuries. The medical examiner testified that she suffered approximately 120 stab wounds. The exact number, the pathologist explained, was difficult to determine because of the sheer volume of injuries. The examination also revealed the extent of her blood loss, so severe that only a minimal amount remained in her body at the time of recovery. While investigators processed the scene in Clarendon County, officers in Columbia were tracking a black Chevrolet Impala captured on surveillance video outside the Five Points district. Later that same day, police spotted a vehicle matching the description. When officers initiated a traffic stop in the Five Points area, the driver, identified as Nathaniel Rowland, exited the vehicle and fled on foot. He was quickly apprehended and arrested around 3 a.m. on March 30th. Inside the Impala, investigators say they found critical evidence. Cleaning supplies, including liquid bleach, germicidal wipes, and window cleaner, were recovered from the vehicle. Samantha's cell phone was also located inside. Most notably, authorities reported finding a significant amount of her blood in both the passenger compartment and the trunk. The rear child safety locks were engaged, consistent with investigators' belief that Samantha had been unable to escape once inside. The evidence trail extended beyond the car. Behind the residence of Rowland's girlfriend, investigators searched discarded trash bags. Inside, they discovered additional cleaning materials and a two-bladed knife. Forensic testing later confirmed that Samantha's blood was present on those items. Her blood was also identified on clothing belonging to Rowland, including a sock and a bandana. DNA evidence collected from beneath Rowland's fingernails further tied him to the assault. In a striking piece of forensic work, investigators documented a bare footprint impression on the rear driver's side window of the Impala. Using latent print analysis, forensic experts matched the unique friction ridge patterns of that footprint to Samantha's feet. Evidence prosecutors argued showed she attempted to push against the window during the attack. Her fingerprints were found on several items inside the vehicle as well. Rowland was formally charged with kidnapping, murder, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. As the investigation unfolded, authorities also examined a separate 2018 case in which a woman in Columbia reported being carjacked and forced to withdraw money from an ATM before being robbed of personal belongings, including a gaming console.
Deputies later alleged that Rowland sold some of those stolen items at a pawn shop and charged him with obtaining goods under false pretenses in connection with that incident. On June 9, 2020, during a virtual bond hearing, a judge denied Rowland's request for release. Family members from both sides addressed the court, delivering emotional statements before Judge DeAndrea Benjamin. More than 2 years after Samantha's death, jury selection began. On July 20, 2021, Rowland's trial opened in Columbia. Over several days, prosecutors presented testimony from 31 witnesses. Among them were the turkey hunter who discovered Samantha's body, a cell phone store owner who testified that Rowland attempted to sell him Samantha's phone shortly after her disappearance, and Rowland's former girlfriend. Investigators from the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division detailed the forensic evidence, surveillance analysis, and DNA findings that formed the backbone of the state's case. The defense called no witnesses. Rowland did not testify. On July 27, 2021, after just over an hour of deliberation, the jury returned unanimous guilty verdicts on all counts: kidnapping, murder, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. The courtroom fell silent as State Circuit Judge Clifton Newman immediately imposed a life sentence in prison. In delivering his remarks, Newman described the crime as among the most severe he had encountered in his years on the bench. He rejected requests for leniency, stating plainly that mercy was not warranted under the circumstances. Rowland's legal appeals continued in the years that followed. In August 2024, the South Carolina Court of Appeals upheld his conviction. The court later denied an additional request for a new hearing in September 2024. Following the appellate ruling, the Josephson family and Fifth Circuit solicitor Byron Gibson issued statements expressing relief that the conviction would stand. For the Josephson family, the legal proceedings, though lengthy, affirmed what investigators had asserted from the beginning, that the evidence overwhelmingly established guilt. Yet even with the appeals exhausted, the weight of the case remains. It is remembered not only for the brutality of the crime, but for the swift investigatory response, the meticulous forensic work, and the legal process that followed, culminating in a life sentence handed down just over 2 years after a young woman entered a car she believed would take her safely home.
In the aftermath of unimaginable loss, Samantha Josephson's parents made a decision that would transform grief into national reform. Within months of their daughter's death, Seymour and Marcy Josephson established the What's My Name Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to rideshare safety education, public awareness, and scholarship support for students. The name reflects the simple but powerful safety questions Samantha never had the chance to ask that night. What's my name? The Foundation's mission is twofold: to educate passengers about verifying rideshare drivers before entering vehicles, and to advocate for stronger regulatory protections nationwide. Through partnerships with universities, law enforcement agencies, and community organizations, the Foundation promotes consistent safety messaging: confirm the license plate, confirm the driver's identity, and never enter a vehicle without verification through the app. But awareness campaigns were only the beginning. Samantha's death quickly reached state legislatures. On June 5, 2019, just over 2 months after the murder, South Carolina enacted the Samantha L. Josephson Ride-Sharing Safety Act. The law requires rideshare vehicles operating in the state to display license plate numbers prominently on the front of the vehicle, a measure designed to make identification easier and more immediate for passengers. The act also created criminal penalties for individuals who falsely present themselves as authorized transportation network company drivers. Those found guilty of impersonating a rideshare driver can face fines up to $500 and up to 30 days in jail. If rideshare applications are used in furtherance of criminal activity, penalties increase, including fines up to $1,000 and potential incarceration of up to 2 years. The legislative momentum did not stop there. Later that same month, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy signed Sammy's Law, requiring enhanced identification standards for rideshare vehicles in the state. Under the law, companies must issue 2 credential placards to drivers. These placards, placed on rear side windows, display the driver's name, photograph, and license plate number. Vehicles must also carry identifying markers on the windshield and rear window, along with scannable barcodes that allow passengers to confirm a driver's identity directly through the rideshare platform. Lawmakers in North Carolina followed suit. The Passenger Protection Act, signed by Governor Cooper in August 2019, requires rideshare drivers to display front license plates and, beginning July 1, 2020, illuminated signage while operating. The legislation also established criminal penalties for impersonating a rideshare driver and designated assaulting a rideshare driver as a misdemeanor offense. In addition, it allocated $500,000 in grant funding for colleges to educate students about rideshare safety and created a study commission to evaluate further safety enhancements. In New York, similar legislation was introduced in April 2019 by State Senator Anna Kaplan. That proposal required highly visible and illuminated signage identifying rideshare vehicles while drivers are active on the platform, ensuring visibility from at least 50 feet during daylight and nighttime hours. Meanwhile, Samantha's parents turned their focus to federal reform. On June 13, 2019, federal legislation known as Sammy's Law was introduced in Congress. The bill sought to standardize rideshare identification requirements nationwide. It included mandates for front license plates, illuminated windshield signage, and scannable quick response codes to verify driver identity. The legislation also proposed financial penalties for states that failed to adopt compliance measures, including a potential reduction in federal highway funding. Additionally, the bill called for the formation of a 15-member advisory body, Sammy's Council, composed of federal officials and public stakeholders. The council would report to the Secretary of Transportation and work to advance consistent safety standards within the rideshare industry. Further provisions directed the Government Accountability Office to conduct comprehensive studies examining assault and abuse incidents involving both passengers and drivers, as well as the nature and effectiveness of background checks conducted by rideshare companies. In July 2020, the U.S. House of Representatives unanimously approved the federal version of Sammy's Law. Continued advocacy efforts led to additional federal legislation authorizing a nationwide study of rideshare safety practices. That measure passed both chambers of Congress and was signed into law on January 5, 2023. The Josephson family was present in Washington for significant milestones along the way, including attending the 2023 State of the Union address as guests of Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey, a moment symbolizing how a local tragedy had reshaped national policy conversations. On campus, Samantha's university also took action. The University of South Carolina launched its own What's My Name campaign to reinforce rideshare safety protocols among students. Posters, digital messaging, and campus programming now regularly emphasize identity verification before entering vehicles. Even as laws were passed and campaigns expanded, Samantha's personal legacy remained central. In May 2019, she was awarded her bachelor's degree in political science posthumously at what would have been her graduation ceremony. Her diploma was presented to her mother in a moment that underscored both achievement and heartbreak. Back home in Robbinsville, New Jersey, the community created a lasting memorial. The township built a patio and rock garden dedicated to Samantha's memory, a quiet space designed for reflection, symbolizing resilience and remembrance. Today, Samantha Josephson's name is attached to legislation, advocacy campaigns, scholarships, and public safety initiatives across multiple states. Her story is cited in campus orientations, driver training programs, and policy debates. For her parents, the work continues, driven not only by the desire to prevent future tragedies, but by the conviction that their daughter's life must be remembered for more than the violence that ended it. Through the What's My Name Foundation, through state and federal reform, and through the students who now pause to verify a license plate before stepping into a car, Samantha's legacy lives on, not in fear, but in awareness, accountability, and change.